All right, and we are back. I hope you're enjoying the show so far, and I'd like to welcome Niki V.
Hey, it's good to be here.
It's good to have you here. You are an independent wrestler, correct?
Yes.
Tell me something. What got you interested? Like, give me some of your influences.
Hulk Hogan, Jeff Hardy, Lita, Undertaker, Mick Foley. I mean, those were really the people that I was just like, wow, I want to do this like for the rest of my life,
Mm-hmm.
or at least as long as I can.
That's pretty awesome. How old were you when you first decided?
I was about 13, beating up the guys at school. So that's really where it started, and I was like, you know what, I definitely want to do this for a living.
Wow.
That's where you knew you liked it.
Oh,
Huh?
yeah, that was the breaking point where I knew I had to do it. So.
Have you ever done the Swanton bomb off the top of a 20-foot ladder?
No, that I have not done.
There's still time.
I'm not as good as Jeff Hardy. I give the man credit.
You got time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tell me some of the organizations that you wrestle for.
There's NWW in Rhode Island, which they're phenomenal. I love working with them. NCW I just got into, which they're also up and coming. They have some great guys out there, and I definitely see big things for them. PWS, who gets a lot of actually WWE, former wrestlers in from time to time, so they're doing pretty well. And I'm like honored to have worked with all these guys. And so those are some of like the big ones that I kind of put up there.
Awesome. I would also like to remind our viewers out there that independent wrestling is another thing we're going to be covering here on Sportswire Entertainment. Again, as you can see, the independent wrestlers have passion for the sport. And I still call it the sport. It's sports entertainment, I know. But, they have passion for the career choices they make. I'll keep it like that. The fact is, I think it's awesome that you're able to work with all these organizations, because if you were able to get to the WWE or TNA, you'd be under a no-compete clause. Have you ever had to try out for?
No, I mean, for the most part, that's not really what I want to do, because they're so restricted as far as like what they want you to do, and I mean, I just kind of enjoy what I'm doing right now, being able to kind of say, no, I don't want that booking, or yeah, I do want to do this, or I don't want to travel. And with WWE, I mean, I do have a 5-year-old child, so with WWE being on the road, it's not a good fit for us. So.
Wow.
Yeah, since it gives you a lot of freedom then to control your schedule and what opportunities you're actually going to take.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your path to becoming a wrestler, like who you train with. And
my trainer is actually Widowmaker Eric Shred. He's a pretty big deal on the independent wrestling.
Okay.
He was phenomenal to work with. He's definitely like one of the best people I've met in the business. And he's given me great advice like throughout the 4 years that I've been involved. So I have a problem, I go to him.
Okay, gotcha.
But he trained me, and I mean, it's been a pretty long journey. I mean, training never stops is really what it comes down to. You're never done training. You're always training. You're always working to be better, and you're never going to be the best. Like, you can never just look at yourself and say, you know what, I've done everything. Like, I'm the best, and I don't need to train anymore. You can't do that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. All right, well, I gotta ask. Coming up next Sunday, being WrestleMania Sunday, Cena or The Rock?
I have to go with The Rock. Personally, I mean, everyone loves John Cena, but, I do love The Rock. I mean, that's who I grew up watching, and, I mean, Cena came in shortly after I stopped watching. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great athlete. He does really well for himself, but I have to go with The Rock.
You can't go wrong with The Rock.
Juan, if you're watching, there's another Rock fan for you. No, that's awesome. I like that synopsis that you just gave us. If there's anybody out there that wants to become a wrestler, male or female, what kind of advice would you give them?
Definitely get yourself into a school and to be trained, because a lot of guys out there think that they can train, and odds are you're probably working in a backyard, and that's not the way to go. That is like the
That was
worst
just-
thing you
just
could
on
ever
me.
do.
That sounds like a safe bet.
Or else
Well,
you
you
get-
get the one guy who's kind of trained and kind of says, oh, you know what, I could train everybody, and let me tell you, it's not the right way to go.
That sounds like a way to get injured is what that
Yes,
sounds like.
pretty much, and, or you get, you do get some attention off YouTube, and, you might get into a indie company or a bigger company, and you can't work correctly, and you end up hurting somebody else or yourself. And
Or you get hit over the head with a trash can.
yeah, I mean, a lot of the wrestlers, they don't play around. If you screw up, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
You were mentioning you work with some people who were formerly in the WWE. Not to spend too much necessarily on this, but do you have any favorites that you've been able to work with, whether they were formerly in the WWE or just in any of the independent wrestling
I mean,
organizations?
when it comes to, well, like I said, PWS, they bring in a lot of WWE guys. I've personally never had a match with anybody, famous or anything like that, but, I did get to sit down and talk to Mick Foley at a PWS show, which, I was pretty much crying because I was, in such awe of him telling me how his favorite moment was dancing in the ring with his daughter. And she was a year and a half at the time, and I got to meet his daughter, and it was just really nice to be able to sit down and talk to him and see, his experience and what advice he could give me, and because I grew up watching,
Yeah.
yeah. That's fantastic. So, going forward, I would like to let everybody know that there's actually a wrestling school in New Haven, Powerhouse Wrestling Academy, run by two wrestlers, and I've actually personally been to their dojo. I mean, I've seen the inner workings. I've never gone in the ring. That's something I'm yet to accomplish. I promise I'll get there.
Now you can hold them to it.
Yes, exactly. Now you can hold me accountable too. Make sure to tweet me every day, or tweet the Sportswire every day.
Probably not every day, but
I would, on a side note, I would like to let everyone know, you might see some scores scrolling at the bottom. We do have people monitoring the NCAA men's and women's games throughout the night. Oh, there's no scrolling? Okay, there's no scrolling, okay.
Syracuse won though. I do know that.
And Florida Gulf Coast lost.
They did.
All right, getting back to wrestling. Now, how do the bookings work during any independence? Do you always know who's going to be there all the time, or?
I mean, you don't always know, who, is on the roster, who's working that night. I mean, pretty much they'll put out a flyer, and, you see whoever's on the flyer, and then there's usually about 6 or 7 matches, after that as well. They'll send out events on Facebook and stuff like that, but, I mean, for the most part, with NCW, the one that I've been working with recently, it's kind of my buddy Lumberjake kind of just says, oh, we got your show, are you coming out? And I'm like, oh, all right. Why not? Where am I going? Massachusetts, Rhode Island?
That works, yeah.
That actually is a good question. Are all the ones that you're involved in basically concentrated within the tri-state area here, or what, how far do you usually travel?
Well, I mean, honestly, I've gotten bookings out in California, but I can't really accept them because, I mean, it's really not worth it,
Right.
For what they would pay me, or, just either the plane ride out there and, hotels and stuff. I mean, I would be spending more than I would be making, so it's really not worth it to me right now. But I mean, there's independent wrestling all over the place. You just have to kind of look for it. Even in Connecticut, right here in Connecticut, there's quite a few promotions that people don't even know about. And I mean, I kind of blame poor marketing on that, for, not promoting enough, but.
Well, and I could be wrong on this, but is that something that you started to get involved in as well, as doing a little bit more on the production side?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much do most of my own promoting. I mean, I do self-promotion. I do have a manager, but he kind of lives far away, so he does what he can to help me out here and there. But I mean, as far as it's pretty much just me and my web designer that kind of handles all my, he handles all the stuff I don't want to do, pretty much. So.
Hey, that works. sometimes you gotta pass the buck somehow.
Well, I mean, it's really just, traveling and trying to keep my bookings in order. I'm just like, Marky, here's some money, just, this is what I want on the website, you do it.
Wow, that's fantastic. All right, so now the wrestling fan of me, what's your finishing move?
It's actually, it's a Hurricane Rana.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of people, because, my ring name was Nicolette, or Niki V now,
Mhm.
but they just shortened it to the Nicarana, because they just, and it just kind of caught on, so,
Wow, that's fantastic. Are you looking forward to wrestling? Like, do you still watch the WWE and TNA, or?
I mean, I follow it on the internet. I mean, usually when it's on, I'm passed out. I'm dead to the world. So.
It's a good point, and coming out that late. But yeah, it was a pleasure to have you.
It was great being here. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us.
absolutely, and we will definitely have more information about independent wrestling, including any of Niki V's bookings or upcoming shows on Sportswire Entertainment website, and maybe we'll be able to bring you some video footage in the future show. We're actually going to take a break now, and then when we come back, we'll be talking a little bit about pro sports before we get to our next interview.
Yes.
We'll talk about some spring training baseball.
That sounds like a plan.